Hi and welcome. Today I'm making a art journal page for my new art journal that I made a couple videos ago, and this is it. And if you're interested, I'll have a link in the comments on how you can make it. But today I'm starting with a mixed media paper that I've cut 5.5 by 5.5 because that's perfect to lay down in my new journal. And I'm going to start with some distress inks. And this color is antique linen. And so I put it on my glass plate and just wet it down a little bit with a spray bottle. And I just start kind of dabbing my page. And I'm trying to keep my color concentrated on one side. And I might come out in the middle a little more, but I'm just keeping it to one side. Once I have that first color down, I dry it really good. And then I start in my second color, which is old paper. And I do the same thing. I put it down and looks like I added both of them back on my plate there, old paper and antique linen. And I wet them and I just dab them down and then I dry them. My next step then is I'm using a stencil that I made on my Cricut. You can use any stencil you have. And I'm using Tim Holtz Distress Glaze with a dauber. It's kind of jelly kind of thing. And I'm just adding it into some of the areas that I want to create a resist, so that when I add my next layer, it will resist the areas that I just put on. So my next color is shaded lilac, and I spray it down a little bit, and then I just start dabbing over some of the areas, and you'll see when I bring it back up that it is resisting in the pattern of the stencil that I have. And I need some little more purple. That's kind of going to be my focal color. There, see, you can see that it's resisted some of the areas. And once that's dry, I am going to stamp on top of it. And I believe this is Vintage Photo. And it's an old, it's just a stamp with numbers and lines. It might be a rubber dance stamp. I'm not exactly positive. I like my numbers. And so I'm just kind of randomly stamping, and if I'm using distressed inks, then it's not like standing out really a lot. And now I'm going to black soot. And unfortunately, you can't really see the stamp I'm using because I have another stamp on top of it, but that is a rubber dance stamp, and it's just a column of numbers. It's one of my favorites. I really like it. And then I'm going to come back in with the shaded lilac, and it's another rubber dance stamp, but it's underneath that leaf, and it's just like it says number something. I can't remember what the number is, 562 or something like that. And so I'm just pressing that down in some places, and I'm adding it to my other stamp there, other acrylic block, because it just wasn't, that one was too small. And now I'm coming in with Wild Honey. And I'm putting a number 2. No reason, just a number 2 on a few places in Wild Honey. And those I got, well, no, I'm not sure. Those might be a rubber dance, or I might have got those from Amazon. If I can find the link, I'll put it in the description box. And then I'm coming in with some black StazOn ink and one of my favorite vertical number stamps, and I'm not re-inking it every time because I don't want real bold a lot of real bold anyways into this page. And that one I did get off Amazon. Okay, so I'm done with my stamping. Oh, I'm going to add a little bit of collage to the upper left. But I'm just going to do kind of vintage looking stuff. So I grabbed an old book page. I have a couple different kinds of books there. And I've stamped that big number stamp on top of a really old book. And so the pages are darker and they're really kind of, I wouldn't say they're brittle, but it tears easily. So I take a minute here just to figure out how I want everything to be placed. And I think I'm satisfied with that. So sorry about that glare of my light there. And I get my glue stick out. That's a Tombow glue stick. And I start gluing my papers down. I'm not going to use the whole part of that number, just part of it, so I'll use the other half some other place. And there. So after I'm done securing all my papers, I just trim off what's hanging over. And now I'm going to add some acrylic inks. And I think I start with burnt umber because it seems to be darker. But I use burnt umber and then I use sepia. And these are Daler Rowney acrylic inks. And so I just put them on my glass plate, add some water so that it gets a little drippy. And I'm encouraging it to just drip down my page. I'm encouraging a little sloppiness there. And I think now I go into my sepia. And give a little splatters. Then I grab the Daler Rowney. This is a pearlescent Mazuma Gold. And I just put it on my glass plate and add some water. And I do a few splatters with that. Now I'm going to dry that up really good. And now I'm going to add a little bit more purple. That's the shaded lilac. And I think then I decide just to use my brush and just kind of bring some in. So I dry that up again, and I've decided I want more of the acrylic dripping on the other side, so I'm not sure if, I think that's the sepia. And to encourage more dripping, I just spray some water right on top of it. That's a lot of acrylic ink sitting there, so I just kind of dab it onto a card. I don't know if I'll be able to use that later because it's so dark, but I didn't want to waste it. So now it's all drying. I'm figuring out what focal point I want. So I picked out 3 and I'm kind of just placing them to see, and I decide on that one. The purple really matches well, and I'm pulling out my liquid glue. It's called Barely Art craft glue, and because that's a thicker paper, it's on watercolor paper, and so I want it to make sure it sticks real well. So I just kind of put the glue on the back, position it, and secure it on there. Trim that little stem. And last but not least, we have a sentiment. And when I'm just reading things or watching things, if I hear something that I think will make a good sentiment, I type it into my Cricut and then I print it out with white ink on black paper. And this one says, "It's what you learn after you know it all that counts." And I thought, I really like that. And sometimes I'll just split a long one in 2, but this one I thought that whole left bottom area could use something. And so I just put it in smaller pieces to kind of take more of that area up. And once I know where it's going, I put a little bit of glue on it. And again, I use the liquid glue because it's a little bit thicker paper. So I have my sentiment down. And now I'm going to get my Liquitex matte varnish and give it a coat. I'm going to use my silicone brush. Again, you want to make sure everything's dry before you do this, or else it will kind of smear it up, some of it. And then I'm using my catalyst and wiping any excess off. And there you go. I hope you enjoyed. It inspires you to create something yourself. Have a great day.